Okay, welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Shawnee Mission School District Board of Education. The first item on our agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all please rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our next item is the adoption of agenda. I'll seek a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. Is there a second?
Second, Goodburn.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our regular meeting on December 21st. I'll seek a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. Is there a second?
Second, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Approval of the minutes from our special meeting on January 4th. I'll seek a motion.
Move approval, Goodburn.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. Is there a second? Second, Borgman. Thank you, Ms. Borgman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And finally, we have our approval of our minutes from our Board of Education workshop on January 11th. I'll seek a motion.
Move approval, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. Is there a second?
Goodburn, second.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The next item on our agenda is public comment for this evening. We have a time for public comment at all of our meetings from 5:30 to 6. We ask if you would like to speak at a meeting to please provide notice to our current board clerk, Sheriff. You can email her or give her a phone call and she will put you on our agenda. We ask that you come to the podium when your name is shared. Please give a building that you are related to. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes, or if for some reason we have enough public speakers, we may shorten that to get it in within the 5:30 to 6 timeline. If you have a group of people speaking, we ask that you select a group representative to share your interests. Written comments and or materials are accepted, and please, if you provide those, provide enough for all of us, or send via email to us. And please remain at the podium while you make your comments. If you have an item that discusses specifically a staff member or student, we may have to have that comment done in executive session to protect the privacy interests of those individuals. And with that, we will move to our speakers for this evening. Our first speaker is Emmett Manslow.
Thank you. Yes, all right. Emmett Manslow, Shawnee Mission alumni. I have a speech prepared here. I have provided an article too also for you. It tells about the impact of removing names and images that have affected an Ohio community who are called the Redskins, the Miami Redskins, kind of for your reviewing. I am asking you to stay your decision until some other developments come out that have happened and are happening at a higher level. That would be sometime soon. We're hoping February. My biggest question I have when people are trying to remove names and images of Indians is, what do we really get as Indians from these changes? Sure, you're adding education, but what good does education do without the names and images? I know what we lose if we remove the names and images: a seat at the table. If these images and names are removed in a few years, when the school board is trying to cut funding to something, what are they going to cut first? Because after everyone has forgotten Shawnee Mission North Indians, what is the need to educate on who Indians are? So now Indians lose more representation. What is happening today is a modern-day manifest destiny trying to wipe out Indians from our dominant society social landscape and replace that with another group or nothing at all. So again, I ask you to educate, not eradicate. Don't let Indians be forgotten. And there is a difference between Indian imagery and the Ku Klux Klan. And you are treating these images as the same as the swastika. Some of your biggest fans have shown support in your cause: white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and the Ku Klux Klan. It baffles me that you and your views here today align with those organizations. So I ask you to think about who you're aligning with when you're trying to eradicate Indians. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Alicia Vincent.
Alicia Vincent, Shawnee Mission North, class of 1995. At this point, you've heard from me, you've heard from my 6th grade daughter, you've heard from her stepdad, You've listened to the testimony of attorneys, psychologists, educators, and tribal members. Chief Ben Barnes even drove hours out of his way for 3 minutes of time at this podium just last month. Included in the packets of letters my daughter solicited and supplied you with were statements from Native children, a children's book author, college professors, and local members of city councils. She also passed on to you letters from the following organizations: the American Indian Council, the Kansas City Indian Center, the National Center for Indigenous American Cultures, all located here in Kansas City, and all expressing unanimous support for this district to move away from appropriative depictions and towards a more inclusive atmosphere that includes accurate Native history. There was also great generosity extended your way, coming in the form of a letter from Haskell Indian Nations University and signed by nearly every faculty member during finals week, which is no small feat. This letter, by the way, supported holistic change in our district and backed up those words with a willingness to help you identify a suitable Native Studies educator and develop a high school appropriate line of coursework. Also, there was the standout letter from the Kansas House of Representatives, new representative, Christina Haswood, a Dene woman who specifically referenced the pain and hurt in once playing basketball against a Shawnee Mission North team that disrespectfully depicted herself and other Native players. We have presented all of this information to you in a good way. This process has included people of every age and every walk of life, and most of us were working towards this change independent of each other. Most of us had never even met. This is not a recent desire for change, by the way, following a Black Lives Matter summer of activism, nor is it about political correctness, as continues to be misportrayed. As a board, you surely know at this point, if you did not know before, that there have been people in this community working towards more inclusive Indigenous recognition for decades, long before the 25 years ago that I stepped foot into Shawnee Mission North. In December, when we assembled here, there were 3,569 signatures in our online petition. Today, there are 4,638. I simply want to thank you with a grateful heart. This process has not only encouraged children like Grace to come and stand at this podium last month, but it has encouraged children like my daughter. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kate Raglow, I believe. I apologize if I've mispronounced that.
That's okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kate Raglow, and I come before you not only as a resident of Roland Park, but also as a representative of Roland Park's Racial Equity Ad Hoc Committee. In a majority vote of the Roland Park Racial Equity Ad Hoc Committee, we are here to stand in unity with the efforts to change the Shawnee Mission School District mascot, as well as all other mascots named after Indigenous tribes or any ethnicity throughout the county and the state. We recognize that the Shawnee tribe has made their voice heard, and we're proud to stand with them in the belief that people and ethnicities are not mascots. They are communities with rich and diverse histories to be celebrated, not made into caricatures to be used as logos. Though we recognize there are varied opinions on this subject, we believe that there are better ways to represent our school district's pride. Diversity in the Shawnee Mission School District curriculum to show the history, journey, and struggles of our Native and Indigenous brothers and sisters would go a long way to help those who may oppose this change appreciate why so many feel this action is necessary and overdue. The Roland Park Racial Equity Ad Hoc Committee applauds this effort to retire the current Shawnee Mission mascot, and we ask that you all support and vote for this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker this evening is Scott Bozarth.
Hello, I'm Scott, and I'm affiliated with Hawker Grove Middle School. Dear district board members, faculty, staff, and more importantly, stakeholders and taxpayers, I'm here tonight to voice my disdain for the more than $250 million bond proposal. This proposal comes at a time many of us have been struggling financially, logistically, and emotionally. While this pandemic has affected people from all around the world, my concern is how it has affected us locally. We, the taxpayer, already fund this district. With our strained wallets and our kids at home, this district is employing some of the most expensive administrative staff in the state. It's paying a superintendent nearly $400,000 a year in salary, benefits, and perks, like a $1,000 a month car allowance. 2 senators combined don't make that much, and their worth is debatable. If the superintendent compensation was at $200K, you could hire 2 new teachers or give at least 30 or more teachers a $5,000 annual raise. Our children have been out of class or have been remote learning for nearly a year. When our malleable kids are in school, they're separated, masked, and put in front of a teacher who sits behind a shower curtain and plexiglass as if my kid is a danger. Sports, choir, band, canceled. When they're remote learning, they're receiving a half-assed education. And I'll come back to that word education in a moment. The harm this district and districts with similar policies have done to our kids mentally, physically, and emotionally is far worse than the potential hazards our kids and families would face with kids going to in-person school. COVID response aside, I said I would touch on the word education. There are so many meaningful things our kids should and could be learning. From the time I graduated in this district through raising my own children, I have seen this district's focus shift from a more academic education to a political, ideology-driven education with some social experiments worked in. At Hawker Grove Middle School, our children, our 12 to 14-year-olds, can learn oral sex and anal sex are good ways for them to express their sexual feelings. They can learn the founding of this country and the war for independence is about, quote, boring white men doing boring things. They can also learn the Second Amendment is about deer hunting and just erase the part where it begins with a well-regulated militia necessary to the security of a free state. It's upsetting. I don't care who you voted for. My kids are in school to learn facts, not ideology. In closing, I'm furious this district knocks on my door and asks for more money to indoctrinate rather than educate my kids.
Your time
This
is
last
at
year
its
has been
end.
disastrous, and the contents of their classes is dismal. So much
We
money
have
could
no
be freed
further
up
public
by the
speakers.
administrative bloat.
And so at this
Expensive property
juncture,
and irresponsible
public comment is
spending.
concluded. We will resume at 6 p.m. for the
I would-
regularly scheduled
I would
meeting.
rather pay for an independent audit than another penny on this district, because I sure as hell know it won't go to improve my kids. How dare you guys exploit?
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We are returning. The next item on our agenda is our superintendent report, so we will turn it over to Dr. Fulton for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Great to see everybody this evening. I want to start off, first of all, by just celebrating you. You know, this January is School Board Recognition Month. And so we want to start off with a video to honor you, and then I have a few comments after the video.
Across the state of Kansas, the mission of public schools is to meet the diverse educational needs of all children and to prepare them for future success. For 50 years, the Shawnee Mission School District has been governed by a 7-member volunteer board of education elected by the Shawnee Mission community. Our board is responsible for policy making, adopting the budget, and approving personnel, curriculum, and other business matters. The board hires the superintendent and oversees the superintendent's responsibilities and performance. Under the direction of the Board of Education, Shawnee Mission underwent a community-based strategic planning process and the development of a strategic plan document that will drive the district's work for the next 5 years and beyond, ensuring that each student will have a personalized learning plan that prepares them for college and careers with the interpersonal skills necessary for life success. Please join us in thanking these dedicated volunteers for their passion, commitment, and service to the students, staff, and community of the Shawnee Mission School District.
Okay, well, it's very exciting to be able to honor each of you this evening. You know, it's often forgotten that board members hold a volunteer position in the school district, and you dedicate a tremendous amount of your personal time to this effort. You make a number of really difficult decisions, and you do so with incredible grace. Tonight, to show our appreciation for your hard work and dedication, we want to give you a few things to take home this evening. But there's one element that I really want to highlight, and that is some artwork. We're featuring several pieces of artwork by Shawnee Mission students this evening in the boardroom. You can see those back here. And this is all artwork that students have submitted as part of their district-wide digital art show. These selections have also been printed on a custom set of stationery for you to use. The art represents students from across the district in grades pre-K through 12th grade. We want to thank the students who have shared their incredible creativity with us. We want to thank you for all that you do for the students and staff in the Shawnee Mission School District. And we're going to share a link to the newest district-wide quarterly art show featuring the work shared here and more in the recap. Thank you for your volunteerism. Thank you for your grace. And thank you for taking the time to care enough about every child in our school district to serve on the Board of Education. You're making a difference, and we appreciate everything that you do. Next, I want to share a little bit about our signature program. Tomorrow, students and families will have a chance to learn about the unique programs that are available to middle and high school students in Shawnee Mission. The Shawnee Mission signature programs help high school students prepare for specialized academic and future career opportunities. So there's a virtual information session that will begin at 6:30 on Tuesday, January 26th. Many of the signature program classes take place in this building and at the District Career and Technical Center. So we're going to include a link with more information on the sign-up in the recap. Well, as you know, our community is making a decision about a bond proposal, and tomorrow is the deadline. All ballots must be received by the Johnson County Election Office or one of their official drop boxes by noon tomorrow, Tuesday, January 26th. Anyone needing more information about the proposal can find it on our website. The Johnson County Election Office is also the best resource for individuals who have questions about their mail-in ballots. Official drop boxes are at several locations in our community, and addresses are printed on the ballot. Voters are deciding on a proposal that would allow for facility improvements in the district and would allow us a pathway to hiring additional secondary teachers. This proposal was put together by many across our community, and we appreciate everyone who's taken time to vote. And now for a continued very special part of our meeting tonight, I want to invite Dr. Ryan Fleury, principal of the Career and Technical Education Center, to introduce our first All-Star honoree this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Fulton, and good evening, Board of Education. We have the distinct pleasure tonight of recognizing one of the best teachers in the district, and she happens to work right here in this building. Connie Gandy is the definition of professionalism and dedication to her students. She works tirelessly day in and day out to help students prepare for their future and to connect them with real-world learning opportunities aligned with their passions and interests. So congratulations, Connie, and I think we can start a video. Beyond helping our students learn professional skills, which she's amazing at doing, Connie really works tirelessly to connect students' passions with opportunities out in the community to experience real-world learning. She really works to connect kids with something that they can take away and learn more about what they want to do when they get out of high school.
she loves what she does, and you can tell through what how she shows herself and how she holds her head up. I feel like she has not only a very fun job, but a very hard job. So I think if I could be half the teacher that Connie Gandy is, I feel like my work would be done.
She really embodies that philosophy that we are here for all students, and we want to make sure all students have a chance to grow and learn and connect with their futures.
Her openness and just her willingness to do anything. You can ask her any question. She really makes her classroom a no judgment zone to make sure that everyone's learning at their pace. She set up this whole scenario, and she gave each group a folder of clues about your patient that you need to define. And she was like, okay, go find your patient and then rescue them and then bring them back. And it was just a whole surprise thing. We're oh my gosh, we have no idea what we're doing. And she's just very spontaneous. It's a teacher like that. But she helps our skills in a certain way. So even if we had to do this in the real life, say there was actually somebody hurt down there, we would know what to do now. In the woods, we had to climb through trees and everything. And she was make sure you don't get hurt or else you become the patient. And she's just a really fun teacher. That was such a fun activity for all of us to do, especially since we're not able to shadow right now. You deserve it so much. We're so proud of you and all your accomplishments. I'm so proud of you. You're literally the best teacher I've ever had, and you deserve this award so much.
Connie, congratulations. This is well deserved, and we look forward to many, many more years of you working with our students here in our medical health science program. Beyond helping our students learn professional skills, which she's amazing.
Thank you all so very much. It's an honor and a humbling privilege to be able to connect students to what their passions are. And sometimes they don't even know that until they get a chance to try on the shoes, if you will. And 2 years later, see them doing what it was that they thought they could do. I'm still connected to so many of our past students who are now healthcare providers and social workers and firefighters. And without the opportunity and support that you all have given us to be able to provide that, certainly we wouldn't have that. So thank you all very much.
Congratulations, Connie. And next, I want to invite Kelly Swift, principal from Roseland Elementary, to the podium to introduce our next All-Star.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight to recognize, celebrate, and honor Roseland's head custodian, Jose Munoz, as a Shawnee Mission All-Star. Jose is known for his student, teacher, and safety focus, his reliability, his hard work ethic, and the positivity that he radiates throughout the building. He continually goes above and beyond for the Roseland community and is a true staple of Roseland Elementary. When I reached out to staff and asked for volunteers to say something about Jose for the All-Star video, I had a group of teachers come into my office and say, Kelly, there are so many of us who want to say something to show our appreciation for Jose. How are you going to choose who is going to say something in the video? As I thought through this, all I could think about was what an amazing predicament to be in. What a testimony to how much our Roseland family values Jose and the work he does. Jose, I hope every day you feel the appreciation and support we all have for you. You are beyond deserving of this recognition. I hope you enjoy this video highlighting just a glimpse of what you do for Roseland every day. Congratulations.
Good morning.
Hi, Jose, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Great.
Oh, I like your setup, looks good.
Thank you.
Mr. Jose is probably the hardest working and happiest man that I have ever worked with, not just in my teaching career, but really anywhere that I've worked.
You go inside the classroom in the morning and you just see everything spotless. He'll say hi and he'll just smile and we'll all smile back. And it's really sweet of him to be able to focus on cleaning while making us smile at the same time.
He is always moving. He moves very quickly, and that's one thing that he is always a couple steps ahead of us.
Because I think he does a lot of stuff to make children laugh and make them feel happy.
He greets every kid with a smile and a good morning, and just like warmth just pours from him. And you can tell that he loves being a part of our school community, and that it's not just a job where he comes in and checks off his list. He really wants to be a part of these kids' lives and treats them with respect, and they in turn really respect him and love him. He's just a great person to be here.
Having to sanitize everything, keep it clean so we don't get sick. He cares a lot about us, I can tell. Always having a kind soul.
For sixth grade students to identify that they're feeling respected by the person who's basically taking care of them all day, it's pretty amazing. I mean, you can see his heart in his job.
Jose's a great guy. He's always had a smile on his face and happy to help with any project, and always does his job with pride. And I think that's really important for the kids to see too.
He's more than a custodian. He's such a great role model and leader, and his attention to detail and how he interacts with the students.
And the building still looks wonderful. He still greets me at the door, welcomes me, good to see you. And so, like I said, is those kind of relationships are just not the ones you work with, for that time being, but they'll be forever relationships.
He is a man of integrity who lives out his integrity and his positive attitude towards life with us every day. And so I think we are very blessed to have him.
You are the best. Yes, I want to thank the Shawnee Mission School District for hiring me. I want to say thank you to Ms. Kelly Swift, our new principal, who worked very hard. Is a great leader to our school. I want to say thank you to Ms. Dr. Bolivar, our principal, who was transferred to another school last year. I want to say thank you to the Roseland staff and to the students. And I also want to say thank you to my supervisor, Judge, and the Operations and Maintenance Department for helping me keep Roseland Elementary in our top A grade for the Shawnee Mission School District. I want to thank you for the gift and the honor. And I'm very proud and very honored to be the Roseland Panther head custodian. Thank you.
Jose, congratulations, and we're just glad that we can all be here tonight to honor both of you. Thank you for all your wonderful work that you do for the children of Shawnee Mission. And then finally, I want to do a quick COVID-19 update. Our secondary students are back in school in a hybrid format starting tomorrow. As you may recall, after Thanksgiving or since Thanksgiving, we've been remote with secondary, and that was directly tied to having a sufficient number of substitutes to make sure that we could conduct school safely for all of our children. We had to reallocate substitutes to the elementary level to make sure we could keep our pre-K through 6 students in school. We're now in a really good shape with our subs, and so we're able to start our secondary students back in person, so we're excited about that. Also, I'm sure you've been keeping in close track of what's happening with vaccinations. We do have some of our higher risk staff that work with our special education students who will start receiving vaccinations on February 4th and 5th. Vaccinations at this point are kind of trickling in, and this is going to take quite a long time to get all of our staff vaccinated at the current rate, but we're hopeful that we'll get a lot more vaccinations in the near future, and if we do, then we can really speed that pace up. We do have a lot of planning going on in the background, but honestly, it's difficult to plan too much when you don't know exactly what the number of vaccinations that you're going to have available to you are. So we are planning with multiple contingencies in place. All I know is this: if tomorrow they would say, you need to we have vaccinations for all of your staff, we'd figure out a way to get them there as quickly as we possibly can. So that concludes my report, and Sally, turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Fulton. We're moving on to reports from board members. Miss Borgman, do you have an update for us from the SMAC community?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So this is from Tash Davis, who is the SMAC president. And she wants us to know that PTAs across the district have been diligently educating and sharing information with members and communities, encouraging the yes vote for the 2021 bond. The SMAC board is preparing for the annual principal and PTA presidents exchange, which will be held virtually. Details and further information will be sent this week. The clothing exchange continues to be open to SMSD resident shoppers on Thursday evenings from 4 to 7. The clothing exchange is at the Shawnee Mission Early Childhood Education Center, door number 7, and you must present a photo ID to shop, and you must observe COVID safety policies. And she asked me to please read the statement. So again, this is from SMAC PTA. The SMAC PTA board would like to recognize and thank each member of the board for volunteering to serve. Thank you for your ongoing dedication and tenacity during this most difficult year. Thank you for guiding our families and working together in the best interest of our kids. You are appreciated. Sincerely, SMAC PTA. And we thank SMAC PTA for those kind words and all they do for kids across the district.
Thank you. Ms. Hembry, do you have an update for us from the Education Foundation?
I just wanted to briefly note that the Leadership Shawnee Mission Program for year 2020 is actually launched today. Although it's 2021, there are obviously some logistical challenges. So they're really happy they've still been able to have Leadership Shawnee Mission. I don't want to steal Kim's thunder because I'm sure she's going to come and give us a more detailed report at some time. But it's a big feat to change a program like that and accommodate all of the protocols that need to be accommodated and still be able to have something like an in-person leadership experience for our students. So kudos to the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation.
Thank you. Reverend Guy, do you have an update for us from KSB Board of Directors?
Yes, we had our board meeting last Thursday afternoon online, and then later that evening was the official vote taken. Part one was taken during the December online annual meeting, and then part two was last Thursday, and I believe Dr. Sinclair attended that, so I'll let her tell you more about that. There is a lunch and learn opportunity tomorrow. This is part of their Women in Leadership program, and the guest speaker tomorrow in this online meeting will be the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of NSBA, that's the National School Board Association, Ana Maria Chavez. And so she will be speaking tomorrow for this online conference for anybody who would like to attend. I think it's not too late to register still, so I'm planning to attend that. And then just let people know that now that the legislature is in session, Mark Tallman and Leah Fleiter are doing lots of updates about what's happening. I know we're going to give updates tonight too, but if you want more of a day-to-day bird's eye view of what's going on, I encourage you to go to kasb.org and follow them and get those updates from them. That's all I have.
I'd add to that, I'd recommend following them on Twitter as well, as they both do live play-by-plays of committee meetings, and it's nice to stay abreast of what's happening in committees through that. So I appreciate their willingness to do that. Dr. Sinclair, do you have the second part of that KSB update for us?
So I attended or served as the delegate assembly for Shawnee Mission on the 21st that evening, and we, as a board, as a Kansas Association of School Boards delegate, we adopted the legislative platform for the state and for the federal priorities for Kansas Association of School Boards. So that is approved as the session begins.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone who serves on that. I know it's a chunk of time.
And those can be found on the kasb.org website, both of those platforms, the state and the federal.
For the Policy Review Committee, Ms. Goodburn, do you have an update for us for that committee?
I do. We did not hold a January meeting because we didn't have any business. There was no comments or revisions or any comments about policy ACA, so we canceled that meeting. You do have 5.01, which is the second read of policy ACA on school mascots later on to consider. And our next policy committee meeting will be Thursday, February 4th.
Thank you. Mr. Stratton, do you have an update for us from the Finance and Facilities Committee?
With the results of the bond coming probably tomorrow or the day after, that will determine the work of the Facilities and Finance Committee going forward. So we will be meeting shortly thereafter to begin working with the district on the plan moving forward, depending on the bond results. Thanks.
I look forward to you being busy. Okay. Thank you for the updates. The next item on our agenda this evening is the Activity Fund Summary presentation.
Yes, and the next three agenda items, 2.04, 05, and 06, will be done by Mr. Russell Knapp, who's our Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Dr. Fulton. Good evening, Board. It's January, so this time of the year we bring the Student Activities Report to you and the Petty Cash Report. It's a semi-annual presentation that we give to you in January and July. So the Student Activities Report is just that, is the school buildings funds that they raise through gate receipts and clubs. If you were to compare this report to this time last year, it is considerably down both in revenue and expenditures. But the good news is that the ending balance has been stable for the first 6 months, and I would anticipate it staying stable through the whole school year. Petty cash, very little activity. Mainly that's just the high schools use that for their starting cash in their cash box. Then the monthly board financial report is through December 31st, so halfway through the fiscal year. We continue to monitor the revenue loss in the operating funds, and the food service fund has really have our attention. So far to this point, our vacancies are significantly higher than they have been in a normal year, and they're offsetting that revenue loss to this point. So we'll keep an eye on that, report back to you later in the spring when we have more definite numbers for you. Food service, we do hope that the Department of Agriculture possibly will have some federal aid to help us there. We just don't know what that looks like at this point, how they're going to calculate that and distribute it to school districts. So that's my report. I'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Knapp? I have a question. With regards to the food service expenditures that we're accruing because we are continuing to provide it, even though what the federal government is supplementing or returning for us is just the cost of the food and not the cost of the labor to make it. Am I understanding that correctly? The money that we're losing in food service is due to, we still have to employ everybody to provide it, but what we're being reimbursed is for the food itself?
That's correct.
With potential CARES Act dollars, would we be able to use the CARES Act dollars to help cover that deficit because that's related to COVID, or no?
Not the current CARES Act 1, we'll call it CARES Act 1 that we currently have. They said in the guidelines that you cannot use it for revenue loss.
Okay. But they have not provided those guidelines on whatever subsequent?
Well, CARES 2, they kind of have guidelines, but they really don't address food service.
Okay.
So what I'm talking about is a separate pot of money through the Department of Agriculture. It is not CARES Act 1 or 2 that specifically talks about how food service funds across the country are being devastated because of not being able to receive the revenue from the students, but they still maintain the labor costs and sometimes even more for additional labor and additional cleaning of the cafeterias.
So there is money available through the Department of Agriculture then for us to pursue?
Well,
we're hopeful that there'll be money available through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and we've been communicating, I've been communicating with KSDE, and just as Mr. Knapp said, all the guidelines hasn't come out yet, but we're monitoring it closely, and we're hopeful we can fill that gap in our food service department.
And just so everyone's aware, what is the gap at this juncture?
Right now, through December, the deficit is $300,000 for food service, and I'm anticipating through June, if I project it out, we would have about $900,000 surplus at the end, which would leave us, no, I'm sorry, a deficit of $1.1 million for the year, leaving us $900,000 in fund balance.
Okay.
But keep in mind, that balance has typically been around $3 million, and it's important that it's that high because we do a lot of purchasing in July and August to start the school year. So that, and they use that fund balance to start the school year. So $900,000 will be very tight to start a school year with. So we're crossing our fingers and hoping, like Dr. Atha said, that we have that money available through the Department of Ag.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Ms. Boardman?
Hello, thank you, Mr. Knapp. This CARES Act 2, do we know many details about how much money, I understand we have?
Yeah, the preliminary allocation is $11.5 million.
And so,
They have not released that yet.
okay. When do you anticipate we should know more about when that money should be?
Becomes available?
Yeah.
Have you guys heard?
The end of
Dr.
this
Atha or
month,
Dr. Full? End
we're
of this
supposed to
month?
get more details, and that money will be available to us through September of 2023. We're still waiting on more specific details so we can really get the planning process done on exactly how those funds will be used. And as a reminder, you know, they're one-time funds.
Right.
So, but it will be helpful, and I think really helpful as we begin to look at issues around COVID-19 expenses, as well as beginning to address student learning issues.
Okay.
Do we have any, are there parameters already for CARES 2 that have been shared yet at all?
For CARES 2, they have, I do have those, are very similar to CARES 1. They're a little more flexible in some areas, but we'll use those as our guidelines when we start planning here in the next month or two.
Any final questions? Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda is a legislative update. We have Dr. Stuart Little here this evening to provide us with that update now that the legislature is back in session.
Yes, and Dr. Stuart Little, who's our district lobbyist, is going to provide an update for you, and it's there for your review. He'll cover all the information in this document for you right now. And then also David Smith, who's our legislative liaison, will join him in providing any additional detail that's necessary.
Thank you. Thank you, Board and Dr. Fulton. I'm happy to be here tonight. You have a written report. I'm going to talk about, there's a lot in the report. I'm going to hit some of the highlights and be happy to answer any questions. We're in week 3, a lot going on. Bills and hearings are coming up, and I'm going to talk a bit about a couple of bills that are coming up this week that have hearings in next week, where we're going to begin to see some activity on the non-public school front, some of the things we've talked about a bit before that are going on. And there's a series of bills and some legislative hearings that have been unfolding that are going to be trying to pass some legislation that will expand and facilitate more non-public school options for folks. At this point, one of the issues that we're particularly looking at, excuse me, are some of the issues with regard to some of the financial oversight and transparency issues that you all, as part of the public school system, have to operate under, and how those may be needed since we are talking about public funds being used in those systems. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of the bills. You know, there's been for probably, I think, 4 years now that when the scholarship program began, that it was slowly implemented. It was tied up in a funding bill that passed the legislature. I think it was part of the 4 in the morning plan a number of years ago that got the program running. And then sent students in underachieving schools that would offer an opportunity for them to for folks to donate to a scholarship granting organization, and then that would help pay for their cost to go to a non-public school. And that was part of the basic structure that was set up. And then since that time, obviously, there have been efforts to be expanding that. One of the things that we talked about before the session we were putting together the legislative platform and conversations were about things such as savings accounts and direct vouchers and those kinds of things. And so we're going to get to that because all those things are coming up now at this point. There have been now, since we've had the scholarship program here for a while, we've now got vendors that are tied to these programs and out-of-state people who are working with the scholarship granting agencies and those kind of things. So there's lots more players, plus the folks that are that want the vouchers for, particularly designed to begin with kids that are free and reduced at poor performing schools. But we've begun to expand that conversation, and I think it's very clear this year, if you've watched a single legislative committee with regard to education, that talking about COVID, the impact of COVID, the issues that everybody's had to deal with and wrestling with learning and how that is happening are part of that conversation now, and they are clearly connected now with the conversation about non-public schools and providing other options for folks. So that's kind of where we are. These hearings, even just as I was leaving to come over here today, there was a hearing going on where there were vigorous conversations with KSD and a couple of school superintendents about how arguing about whether students are not performing because of being hybrid or online. So there's a complex set of issues involved in this now, and so it's a much bigger, I think, issue than it was before, and kind of slowly evolved that. So where we are at this point in the process, tomorrow the House K-12 Education Budget Committee and the Senate Education Committee will both be holding hearings on a bill that's the same bill on both sides that will reduce the requirements for participating in the scholarship program. You'll no longer have to be from one of the 100 lowest performing schools. It'll be open to anyone. It will have some lessened restrictions on who can participate. It will and it'll basically just spread the program more broadly. And of course, there's a $10 million cap on the tax credit that's available out of that program, and that's part of it's tied into lots of those other conversations. That bill has a hearing in both committees. We have submitted testimony on the legislation, and obviously matching the legislative platform that you'll be considering and approving tonight does assert our opposition to those types of programs. And I think one of the things that's going to be an important message is we're talking about taking public funds and sending them out into other systems that don't have all of the oversight that you have, that are part of both the transparency and the oversight and those kinds of issues. So that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about. Then on Wednesday, the House committee's having a hearing on another bill, and it seems very innocuous, but what it does is that it requires, it's a statutory addition that says school districts have to make expenditures and put resources to improve a student achievement. It's absolutely what you all are trying to do every single day, and it's part of how you use those resources that you get from the state and that are raised locally. But it's part of what we're trying to do. But what it says is that you have to direct those sources to increase student achievement. And part of the issue is if you think this out, if that becomes part of the current law here, it kind of posits the assumption that if you don't improve your student achievement, and there are multiple factors, and particularly coming out of the current circumstances we're in, the potential exists to say you have not done what you're required to do under the law, which opens up, again, further conversations about what happens. So it is a small, but I think a pretty compelling long-term bill that has to be dealt with. The last piece of legislation that I would mention is a bill, House Bill 2119, which is essentially an education savings account, and it has been introduced. The informal conversation is it will be heard next week, and that there'll be informational hearings going through early next week where parents administrators, anyone will be invited to come in and talk about the experiences of online learning, hybrid learning, those kinds of things. And then we'll have a hearing on this bill, 2119, that will allow, it's going to, for free and reduced lunch eligible, some other criteria, would be able to set up through the state treasurer's department essentially an education savings account, which the school district would be required to notify students that are eligible that they can establish this account, take their resources to a qualified school, and that's a pretty broad range. That could be a pod group, it could be a sectarian or a religious school or any of those kinds of entities. But what the student would be able to do would be able to take the base aid plus the weightings with them and have those deposited into an account, which then, and the revenue in that would be tax-free for the individuals that take it, and they would be able to take those resources and invest them in a kind of where there are some parameters on how they would need to be, but it includes everything from supplies to tuition to paying for online resources and all those kind of things. So it's very broad, it's very big, and it is a significant change to how we have been doing public education in Kansas for quite a while. That'll be heard next week, and after that, I don't know what I can say, what else comes next after that, but I suspect there are a couple of other things that will come up. But I wanted to just make you all aware that these issues are coming up, that they are a significant issue. There's a lot of attention focused other places, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and give you guys an update and point to those topics. There are a number of other bills in this report. I'm happy to answer any questions about the bills I've described or any of these other ones, but I feel like there may be enough to chew on here with these first items. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for Dr. Little? Brad?
My question is two-pronged that relate to each other. I'll start with that 2119 you just talked about, and then back up and say, out of the rules process that was set recently, was there any changes to what I'll call the transparency to who proposes these bills, who signs on these bills, where these bills come from? I know that was debated earlier. I don't know if anything changed there where we might know where a bill like HB 2119 comes from.
I cannot tell you off the top of my head who introduced it. That's something that can be, that I can find out, but I don't know off the top of my head. One of the two scholarship bills, which are the same bills, that was introduced by the company that works with the scholarship granting agencies as their financial agent, requested that bill in the Senate committee.
And was there any changes considered to the way bills are put forward, where there is a name attached to a bill? I know that's been something that's been thrown around here lately, and I don't know where they settled on this year for the rules.
I believe the rules require, if a legislator is introducing a bill for an organization, some committees allow anyone to request a bill introduction. Some require a legislator. I believe K-12 requires a legislator. But if you're doing it on behalf of someone, I believe the minutes are supposed to reflect who you have to state who you're introducing that legislation for. But particularly 2119, I'll dig into that one. So
I just Googled it really quick, Brad, and it's an ALEC boilerplate. The Education Savings Account Act is an ALEC boilerplate, the American Legislative Exchange Council.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Dr. Sinclair?
Dr. Little, thank you for the update. I have seen out there a solicitation for parents and teachers and students who are frustrated with the reality of learning within a global pandemic. And so these folks are soliciting testimony for support of 2119. Could you maybe speak to some of the issues of why a bill like 2119 would only, what impact that's going to have on public education, and kind of the contradiction in intent behind a bill like 2119 and folks who might be frustrated that they can't be back in school today?
Well, I would say I'm not. I'll see if this answer is sufficient to you. There are a group of individuals who, from the beginning, have believed that part of what needs to happen is for to have some level of choice in where your children go to school. It has sometimes been intertwined with that concept of having that kind of flexibility has been intertwined with let's target at-risk kids because the argument is made if they're not succeeding here, let's give them another option to succeed somewhere else. And that's a group of this, but there's also part of this that is connected to the kind of some of it's philosophical, some of it is practical, and some of it, and a lot of it. I mean, there's a different tone here. A lot of it is the result of the reactions that folks have had in the last 10 months to what's happened to, frankly, everybody's lives, but to the place where many of them experience it is through what happens in their school systems, and that's a big part of of what's shaping a lot of this conversation. And for example, some of in the 2119, the savings account bill, it requires a calculation of the student count this September. So you would base everything based on what's happened, and you would take a measurement of where we are based on the most unusual year in modern history for how you want to do it. It has a lot of those components that are rooted in that, and I think they're part of the solicitation, as you described, about encouraging people to come in and talk about their experiences in the process. I mean, it will look a lot like some of the feedback we all have received about what people believe is wrong with how things have gone in the schools. I think that's what it's going to be. So I think it's one of those opportunities for folks who have watched the effort put in, the struggle, the energy, the time, the resources that you all and school districts all over the state have been doing to make sure that those same voices are heard. I think that would be important. I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I was just going to
Go
confirm that we are providing testimony in opposition tomorrow, written testimony in opposition. Are we weighing in on the other two bills that you mentioned?
We are testifying against both bills tomorrow in the education committees, and we haven't gotten to the next week yet.
Thank you, Dr. Little, for being here this evening and for keeping us abreast. We'll continue to coordinate with you to make sure we get testimony in opposition. All right, and with that, we'll move directly into our legislative platform. We had that in front of us 2 weeks ago. Comments were to be provided to David so that he could help have those in draft form for our discussion tonight. And so we will open it up to that. And I think, David, do you want to speak to that for just a moment?
Sure. I received one comment, and it was concerning under our COVID-19 health, safety, and social and emotional well-being. The first bullet point in the original draft said, maintain the authority of local boards of education to make decisions around the health and well-being of students and staff. And the comment was a concern that in saying that, we don't acknowledge that, in fact, we're not public health experts, and we do that work in collaboration with local and state health authorities. So I thought that makes a lot of sense to me, and I think we can add that and just say in collaboration with local and state public health authorities or agencies. And that was the one comment I received.
Thank you. Did anyone have any additional comments or concerns tonight at the dais? No? Okay.
If I might, it's important that any final changes, such as the language that David just reviewed, be talked about right now, because what we'll do is we'll go and get those changes made in the document, and we'll come back to this later on in an action item. We'll put the document in the action item for you, and just double check it and make sure it's exactly what you want before you vote on it.
And then one other thing to discuss under this is that I'm going to have Dr. Sinclair give a little bit of background on it, but there is an advocacy letter from public education advocacy organizations that is being signed by multiple organizations. And actually, I'll just turn it over to Dr. Sinclair to give us some introductory framework on it so that we can have a discussion about that.
So the statement before you is a joint statement that was signed on by the Kansas Association of School Boards, Kansas School Superintendent Association, Kansas National Education Association, the Kansas PTA, Kansas State Board of Education, the Kansas State Parents as Teachers, a list, kind of Schools for Fair Funding, Schools for Quality of Education, United School Administrators of Kansas, Game On for Kansas Schools. So you can see there's a number of the educational advocacy organizations across the state. And the importance of this joint statement is really to give voice to support for the governor's K-12 budget proposal that maintains support for the school finance formula under the bipartisan Gannon agreement. And kind of given the uncertainty of the revenue and of as fallout from the global pandemic, this is just a way of saying we really need the state to commit to, our legislators to commit to continuation of the school finance formula. So this letter begins with a reaffirmation of support for agreement to restore adequate funding levels and to ensure equitable distribution of those funds. The statement kind of includes a brief description of how restoration over the past 3 years, so this restoration has been phased in over 5 years, so how have school districts spent the dollars in the last 3 years towards the kind of final point of the goal of ensuring that those dollars are associated with student outcomes. So it's the nature of the letter. In discussions with the Kansas Association of School Boards Legislative Committee, which I represent us on, there was discussion in that group to encourage local boards to add their voice to support for this budget. So that is what our question is today, is do we as a board, individual board, want to sign on to this letter of support?
So that's the second half of the discussion. After we discuss the legislative platform, we'll vote on that later. But then do we also want to throw our hat into the ring and sign this letter in support of the budget to get us to constitutional funding levels? I am supportive of signing the letter.
I am supportive of signing the letter as well.
Do you have questions, Mr. Stratton?
I do have a technical question. So if I could ask for interpretation of the sentence regarding the capers, because I might have to abstain because of my role as an elected member of the capers trustees. So what is the advocacy item there? What's that saying?
It's intended to be I'm sorry, I'm double masked. So it's intended to be an explanation of how the capers dollars work in the school finance formula. And I would look to Dr. Little maybe to add to this. But it's to remind folks that those dollars cannot be used to hire additional teachers and whatnot. So it's explanatory is the intent.
Okay, thank you, because that's how I was reading it. It was more explanatory than it was advocacy for one piece or the other. The governor specifically identified a couple pieces, and I was trying to see if that was the same. Am I reading it differently?
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but I've seen it, the proposal, and I think it doesn't touch any of those kind of capers issues floating out there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions on the statement? Ms. Embry?
Yeah, I'm supportive of the statement. I just, as a process question, didn't know, and maybe it's because we haven't approved our legislative platform yet, but if we had, we would have the authority to sign on to things like this regardless. Is that right? Because it's very consistent with our legislative platform.
In general, I'd probably want to come back to the board just to get their concurrence on something prior to signing us to this type of statement that would be considered an advocacy statement, but it is fully in line with our legislative platform, and there isn't anything, I mean, Stuart and David would be taking the platform that is totally in line with this and advocating for these things
Okay.
in Topeka anyways. This just throws our hat into the ring with the other advocacy organizations in support of the K through 12 budget.
Got it. Thank you.
Can I?
Yeah, Mr. Stratton?
I do want to just really make sure, because I think that was a good question. I think some of this document goes beyond what we've talked about in our platform, so I just want to make sure that one cannot presume the other.
Right.
And again, I'm not speaking to my own opinion on this. I'm just saying that when we go as far as to saying that we applaud executive branch and legislative branch folks who are doing certain things on behalf of public education, that is language that goes beyond, I think, what we say in our own platform. I don't know that we go on to do accommodations or for that. So I'm all for it. I just want to make sure that one cannot presume the other, and I concur with the question.
Thank you. I would not sign anything on behalf of the board without having a discussion with the body as a whole, and we're having the discussion tonight. So, and honestly, what we can do when we go to adopt the legislative platform, we can have a vote and a B vote, like we're doing also with the mascots this evening. So we can vote to approve the platform and then vote to concur or not concur on whether or not we want to sign on to the advocacy letter.
That sounds great. Thank you.
And I will place that link in the action item.
Great.
So the public can see the link.
And that's
go ahead, Dr. Sinclair.
I think that's good feedback for future consideration too, in discussions with the KASB Legislative Committee in joint statement. So thank you.
And my question, sorry, in part was just because I've been in roles similar to David's, and I don't want him to ever feel like he's in a position where he has to come back to this board every time something's moving in the legislature, because it's going to move fast, and I want our legislative platform to give him bandwidth to engage as things evolved within the platform.
Are there any final questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Dr. Little, thank you for being here, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for your presentation this evening. The next item on our agenda is our consent items. I'll seek a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. Is there a second?
Second, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Moving on to our action items for this evening, we have item 5.1, approval of the new board policy ACA. I'll seek a motion in a second. We can ask and answer any final questions we might have of Ms. Goodburn. Is there a motion to approve item 5.1?
I will move approval. Goodburn.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. Is there a second?
Second, Borgman.
Thank you, Ms. Borgman. Are there any final questions regarding this policy change for Ms. Goodburn at this time?
I was going to confirm just a timing question. I want to reflect back to folks, because this, we're voting on essentially two things. One is adopting the policy, and the second is actually recommending which particular mascots we think are not compliant with the policy. But I also wanted to ask about the timing for retiring those mascots.
Sure, and I'll let Dr. Fulton speak to that issue.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as part of this policy, the board, if passed, then the board would make a determination on which mascots do not align with the policy. And then once I have that guidance, then I work with the principals to set up a process by which they'll select a new mascot. Now, this year, what that would look like if this policy is passed is we would, by the end of this school year, have the impacted schools identify their new mascot. The actual implementation of the new mascot may vary by school. It depends on the nature of how big that change is and the amount of time it will take for them to accomplish completing that change. So it's possible the mascot gets identified this year, this school year. It's possible the mascot could be in place wholly for next school year. It could be that next school year is a transitional phase where the full implementation occurs the following year. And that will all be laid out as the school works through the process of identifying the new mascot and the timeline, a reasonable timeline for actually implementing the new mascot. Does that answer it? Okay.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Please say nay. Hearing none, that passes unanimously. I will now seek a motion from Ms. Goodburn regarding specific mascots.
I move that the Board of Education determine that the mascots, Indians and Braves, failed to comply with newly adopted policy ACA, that the mascots be retired, and that the new mascots for the schools be selected through a process approved by the superintendent.
Is there a second?
Second, Guy?
Thank you, Reverend Guy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, that also passes unanimously. Thank you. And then, Dr. Fulton, your team is going to be reviewing all others and giving us heads up on anything further.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 5.2, the approval of the calendar revision. This one should be good news for people with the district. Go ahead, Dr. Fulton.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Atha, who's been working closely with this to introduce our presenters this evening. So, Dr. Atha.
Yes, I have been working closely with Dr. Dennis and Linda Seek, president of SMNEA. And I think we've got some good news for you this evening to consider in amending the calendar a little bit based upon a waiver that we have received from the Kansas State Department of Education. So, Dr. Dennis.
Thank you and good evening. I'd like to go through a little bit of the history of how we got here. I promise to be brief. In December, the State Board of Education passed and approved issuing waivers to school districts to allow us to adjust how we count certain student contact hours. This would be a one-time only change for this school year. And their stated concern was that so many districts moved professional learning to the beginning of the year in order to adjust to this pandemic and to being able to be successful in this environment, that they've moved a lot of professional learning out of second semester. And also with the belief that there could be a spike in COVID cases in the spring semester and in the winter in general. So they wanted to give us some flexibility. And so what the waiver will allow us to do is for us up to 3 days to count professional learning time as full student contact. Ordinarily, we count only half of that time. This would allow us to count those as full days. When so we already had 2 days in the window. The window is December 1st through April 30th. January 4th and February 16th were already scheduled professional learning days in that window, so those we would be able to count. We're in addition proposing that we move the teacher-directed professional learning day from what on the current calendar shows June into the window on March 19th. That will allow us to count that time as well. When we go back then and recalculate our hours, we have enough hours in the calendar to be able to release students and staff for the summer prior to Memorial Day. So that is what we're proposing to do. The other change that we would, well, a couple of caveats to that. First of all, it assumes that we don't have unexpected events that would prevent us from going to a remote learning environment. For example, if we had a major ice storm that knocked out electricity to most of the district and we couldn't do remote learning in that environment, we would have to come back and relook at this. In addition, we would be forgiving 6 days on the teacher contract. So we would be releasing staff for the summer earlier than we had, and earlier than the contract would call for. So with those two caveats in mind. The other change that this would make is that we would move graduation dates from the first week of June to the last week of May. They would be May 24th, 25th, and 26th. That's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we chose those days so that if there's a rain delay or a rain event, we have Thursday as a backup date. So that is our proposal. Anytime we have a calendar, well, a calendar in general, but an adjustment as well, we always have a conversation with NEA Shawnee Mission to make sure, first of all, that we are abiding by the contract, and secondly, to get feedback. And I can tell you that Linda has given me some really important and quality feedback over the last several years. So Linda has offered to come tonight and share some thoughts from NEA Shawnee Mission.
First of all, NEA Shawnee Mission and me personally always appreciate the opportunity to work with Dr. Atha, Dr. Dennis, Dr. Hubbard, when questions about the calendar come up, and it seems like this year we have looked at this calendar a lot. So we appreciate that input. Really cannot tell you how much our staff appreciates the idea of ending the year, not in the middle of June, as we were looking last summer, but at a more traditional time. I've been teaching for 32 years, and I always say June is my month that I refresh and recuperate. July is the month that I start to reflect on my practice from the year before. And towards the end of July and beginning of August, we begin to think about reimagining what the new year will look like. And so giving us kind of that traditional summer will help staff have that opportunity to recuperate from what's been a difficult year with COVID, and also begin to imagine what next year's going to look like, because we have learned a lot this year. We have changed our practice, and we have to do a lot of reflection of what that will look like again when, fingers crossed, next year we're back to our more traditional kids in school, pep assemblies, sports, plays, choir concerts, kids in the hallway, having to stand in line to use the restroom, things like that. So we really appreciate this opportunity. I would say that although we don't represent classified staff, this does have an impact on them, and I hope that there can be something done through this board that can make them whole as well. We cannot operate our schools without our classified staff, and they have definitely had a tremendously challenging year as well. So, but thank you for your consideration for this tonight.
Be glad to answer any questions.
Ms. Goodburn?
Have we calculated the impact on classified staff? Do we know what it is, how many days, or what?
I think Dr. Atha is prepared to address that.
Well, I think we know it's going to affect, excuse me. We know it's going to affect them 6 days, and we're prepared to make a recommendation to keep them whole.
Is that part of the vote that we'll be taking tonight with regards to the calendar? So if we approve this calendar update, are we doing it under the impression that classified staff are kept whole as well?
You can do that, or also I think we can do it administratively.
Okay.
It's your call, but we would be happy if you approved it.
I would be happy if that was part of our approval process. I would not want to, I know that they started late as well, and so their income was impacted at the front end of the year, and it would be nice to prevent that from happening on the back end of the year as well.
I think this waiver gives us an opportunity to kind of reward our teachers that have worked hard and our classified folks that have worked hard all year in difficult circumstances. And just to let them know that we value them and appreciate their efforts during this difficult time. So really appreciate your consideration in approving this evening.
Are there any final, Reverend Guy?
I'm just curious if snow days have factored in or could potentially factor in, or are they just a non-issue right now?
Well, we're going to approach those as the inclement weather days. It will be remote days for us. So I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
That was the answer.
Yeah.
I did, I'm sorry, Brad. I was just going to say, I did text Dr. Fulton yesterday during the game with concerns about a potential Red Friday, and he provided to me that we do not need to be concerned with that at this juncture, because Mayor Quentin Lucas has already announced that if we are fortunate enough to be back-to-back Super Bowl winners, there will not be a parade because of COVID. So we would not be in a situation of raining on anyone's parade like that. So it's not, there is no potential Red Friday. so we don't need to, because I was very concerned. I was like, oh my goodness, we
That
have
is
the
a
calendar
very-
tomorrow night.
That is a very important note because this calendar is very tight. So, there's no additional room to work with. And so we certainly hope for a win. We want that.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
we'll need to be in school. And so that's really important to understand going
Well, it
forward.
sounded like to me in hearing his comments after the game last night that it potentially could be, they'll do something, it potentially could be online. So that might be a virtual type celebration, might be able to, everyone could attend potentially in school.
That would be great.
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, and Dr. Dennis gave you an example of the power going out and that affecting us. If in fact there were a parade, that would affect us too, that we would have to reevaluate this because we would not get credit for that day.
And that's true not just because of the pandemic. The Royals Parade, the Chiefs Parade, those don't count as snow days or inclement weather days. They're just lost time.
My only question, I've heard from a lot of teachers who really are excited about this and absolutely deserve it, was I know for parents, this actually will be 2 additional weeks that they have to find childcare for their kids that they weren't anticipating, and that I can feel, so I know we typically circle up with JCPRD and the YMCA when we have a calendar change like this, and I just wanted to confirm that we are going to close that loop and hope to make some options available for families who were looking at a different calendar a week ago.
We will close the loop.
Great, thank you.
Are there any final questions? Okay, not seeing. Do you have a final comment, Dr.
I
Fulton?
do have a final comment. Dr. Dennis does a fantastic job with this, and I can't underscore the importance of working with Linda as well. Thank you, Linda, for your work on this also. It's a team effort across a whole bunch of folks to figure this out. And so I just want to thank you for your great work and appreciate all the collaboration that's involved in making this possible. And also thank you for students and parents, because this impacts them as well.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'll seek a motion for the calendar update.
Move approval.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. Is there a second?
Second, Hembry?
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. We now need to move some board meeting dates in conjunction with that approval of the calendar revision. So item 5.3 is approval of the board meeting dates. I'll get a motion in a second, and then we can have a discussion and ask Dr. Fulton questions on that. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. Is there a second?
Second, Goodburn.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Fulton, or do you want to speak to this for just a second to get everybody up to speed?
Well, this is a slight modification of the calendar that we started the year with. Most of the dates stay exactly the same. There is one notable change, and that is in May. And that has to do with originally we had 2 board meetings scheduled in May. One on the 10th and the other one on the 24th. But the problem is with this change of the calendar, we've moved graduation for East and South to the 24th. So we can't have a board meeting and be at a graduation, obviously. So what we're proposing in this modified calendar is that to drop the May 10th date as a workshop and only have one board meeting in May, and that would be on May 17th. And that would become a regular board meeting, but we would add into that our budget workshop, which is always done this time of year. And in fact, we have to do it this time of year in May. That's the only real change. Dropping the 10th and the 24th of May, and then only having one meeting, and that would be on the 17th.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. We'll move to the approval of the legislative platform. As we've just discussed, I'll seek a motion in a second. If there's any final comments, we'll hear them at that time. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval, Goodburn.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. I'm sorry, what was that?
Second, Hembry.
Second, Hembry. Thank you. All those in, are there any further comments or additions to this?
Let me make one comment. I did, and I don't know if you're seeing this on your screen, but in public comment, we do have the updated legislative platform, the final copy, and you should also be seeing the link to that joint statement that was discussed.
Thank you. All those.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
I want to make sure what he just said there, because he also said the link to the other statement, but we're not voting on that. We're only voting on the statement for this.
Correct.
Yeah, okay,
That's
thank you.
just there for people
That's
to
there for
read it.
informational.
Because it
Thank
was
you.
in the
Thank you.
executive.
Just
contract.
want to make sure.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. So on the legislative platform, not including the letter, we have the motion in the second, and I'll do the final vote for that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the platform standing alone passes unanimously. And then we can do a vote on the advocacy letter to add our name to that. So I can seek a motion to approve that.
Borgman?
Thank you, Ms. Borgman. Is there a second?
Second, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. All those in favor, please.
Hold on, I'd like to discuss,
yes,
please.
Of course, yes, Brad, I apologize. Go ahead.
To me, what I think we're asking this body to do is embarking on a completely new territory, and that is we are endorsing the language of others that crafted it. We just spent a lot of time putting together our legislative platform, to which we had pen in hand, and we wrote the document. I want us to really think hard about the precedent we're setting by now endorsing other organizations, profit, not-for-profit, 501c, all the different structures to which we would be signing our name to, and basically allowing this public entity to have the endorsement of this group on non-public entities. As I said before, I support everything that's being said here. I'm a little concerned about the last sentence when there's language that says, I applaud Governor Kelly, and the governor deserves praise. I'm a Governor Kelly appointee. I support what she's doing as well. I'm concerned about this language because it's a slippery slope when our body begins to say the governor deserves praise or we applaud Governor Kelly. I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I open that up for discussion.
Okay, well, we can have a discussion. Are there any follow-up comments or? Dr. Sinclair?
No, you raised some good points. I'm just reflecting on those. And I'm just wondering if it's something that is worth tabling to think about a little bit more at this point.
Okay.
I mean, it's a long session, so I mean, you know, I hear your points, and the platform is an alignment. It's just the way at which that support is being communicated. So it's good.
Okay.
Food for thought.
I would note too, I think there's some room for just understanding. I would imagine in the advocacy space, there's a lot of opportunities where without us even knowing as a board, we're signing on to other things. If it's and maybe I'm wrong, but like KASB testimony with multiple superintendents, we signed on to letters with other superintendents around issues. Like some of this is already happening. I think the question is just where it's presumed to be acceptable underneath our legislative platform and where it does need to come. Like, to me, that's a piece of the question, is sort of what does our administrative team have room to do regardless, and what needs to come back? Because I think some of this endorsement is probably already happening under the dome on our behalf, but maybe I'm wrong. It's pretty typical.
Yeah, I mean, we get asked to testify from time to time, and certainly we do. You know, for example, tomorrow, where there's written testimony in person or both. So that would be a normal course of event during the legislative session, to be sure. And of course, we work from our own legislative platform to guide what our position will be on that. So that's affirming everything you just said in terms of clarifying how we operate.
Well, there's go ahead, Reverend Guy.
So Dr. Sinclair, what if we were to table this, when would we need to make a decision in order for it to have any efficacy, be delivered to our legislators?
Well, the statement is already out there. So we are part of KASB, and so that organization has signed on to the letter. So in a way, we are kind of supporting it, and by way of testimony in the, throughout the session and through our own legislative platform. So it's the format of the letter is, I think, what we need to think a little bit more on. So,
Ms. Borgman?
I appreciate the discussion. I think it's a good one, and I'm glad we're having this publicly. I just taking that last paragraph into account, I mean, it does seem very pro-public education to me and fairly vanilla in terms of not necessarily an endorsement of Governor Kelly, but more of a support of the Gannon funding and the governor and legislatures who have upheld the fair, adequate funding. So in my opinion, I don't feel like it's an endorsement of Governor Kelly. It is more of a endorsement of public education and doing what the courts have found to be constitutional, or what the court.
Well, with the motion to table from Dr. Sinclair, I'm going to presume, Brad, that you would second her motion to table? Or I'll ask, would you be supportive of Dr. Sinclair's motion to table? Do we need a second to proceed with the tabling?
I'd be supportive, but I'd like to ask other board members to second that.
Sure, of course. Is there another board member who would be willing to second Dr. Sinclair's motion to table?
I'll table it.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ms. Goodburn. So now we will vote on whether or not to table, whether or not we sign on to the letter. I think the statements with regards to it being fair that we are a member of KASB, so it does in one way already have our support because we're members of KASB, but we've also approved a legislative platform. There's not going to be a question on where we stand on these issues if we don't sign this letter. We have issued something that communicates where we stand on these issues that is supportive of it. So I'm going to ask for I vote for tabling. So all those in favor of tabling, please say aye.
Aye.
And I'll say aye to that. And then all those in favor, or all those not in favor of tabling, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. I think I had 2 nays. Did I have 2 nays? And was there 2 nays? Okay, so 2 nays. So the motion is tabled for now. Reverend Guy and Ms. Borgman. And then we can circle back to this at a later meeting if Dr. Sinclair has anything further to bring to us from her position with the advocacy groups. Okay, great. Thank you for the discussion. Yep. All right. Oh, that was it. We made it. And we made it by, it's only 7:19. Congratulations, everyone. Now it is time for comments from board members. We'll start with Ms. Embry on that side of the room and work our way around.
No comments for me tonight.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Goodburn?
For me either.
Oh, wow. I wanted to give a thank you once again to the policy committee for all of their hard work. A lot of what happened here tonight was because of the hard work of Ms. Borgman and Ms. Embry and Ms. Goodburn, the chair, and it is appreciated. We had a really busy meeting tonight with a lot of things going on, and I also wanted to thank you all for your time during Board Member Appreciation Month. I know specifically how much all of you work because I'm in communication with you on your various assignments and what you're doing, and I know that you dedicate a lot of time and sometimes under these circumstances a significant amount of stress. I happen to know that all of you very much care about every child in this district and them succeeding, and the amount of lack of sleep and how much weight you have carried in making your decisions on how we move together through COVID in this year. I just want to appreciate everything that you guys do and how much of your heart and souls you put into this, and it is my pleasure to serve with you. So thank you. Dr. Sinclair?
I'll just say thank you for the opportunity for discussion. I think my advocacy enthusiasm is apparent this evening, so I appreciate your insights, Mr. Stratton, and I appreciate the opportunity for conversation on pretty meaty discussion and agenda today. So thank you.
Mr. Stratton?
Likewise, thank you to the board members that I serve with. I too share in the appreciation of the board service that we all spend a lot of time on together, so thank you for that. I too appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. That's why we have this board table, and I did want to do that conversation. In the end, as I said earlier, we are the Shawnee Mission School District Board of Education, and we are elected by the public to represent this district. And so I want to be very protective and mindful of how we make decisions and how we lend that name to others. Again, I love everything that was listed there. I just really want to be careful that we don't set precedent going forward. Thanks.
Reverend Guy?
I'm just mindful of the historic decision we made tonight about mascots. And I know we had a lot of other things going on, but I just want to take a moment and reflect on that decision and everything that led to it, all the input we got from all kinds of people and the hard work of the policy committee. And it feels historic to me, and it feels like a positive decision that I think is going to be reflected in the future of this district. And so I guess I just want to say a word to our student leaders in some of our other high schools whose mascots don't disagree with the policy we passed tonight, but some of our other mascots, we might have some things we could do better, or some changes that we could make. And so I know we have some outstanding student leaders in our other high schools in student government, in journalism, in athletics, and I would love to see them have some conversations in their schools about their mascots and whether they adequately reflect who they are as a school too. And I think this can be a conversation that continues on and that might bear more fruit into the future. So I want to thank everybody who helped us make that decision, the input we got from the community, the people who did all the hard work, and especially the policy committee. And I'm excited to see what our new mascots will be. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Borgman?
I just had a question, and then just a couple shout outs. I've spoken to multiple PTA groups in the past couple weeks, and thank you, by the way, to all those PTAs for allowing me that opportunity. The superintendent search has been brought up, obviously, time and time again. Can we talk, do we know a timeline? Do we have, how transparent can we be with our community? Do we have some parameters that we can share with our community in terms of, when our community can expect to know more and learn more and understand more about the process?
I think after this evening, we might be able to communicate some additional information out to the community. The survey has not been completed yet. We sent out a survey this week to our patrons, and then one specifically for teachers and one specifically for administrators. So when we get that feedback back from the community, we can lay out some of the things that they provided us as to what their primary characteristics are that they're looking for, and then that can help guide our process as we move forward. I don't have a specific update right now, but we will have additional information later this week, and we should be able to communicate some information publicly regarding where we're at on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just want to give some shout outs. So the end of the first semester, teachers, thank you so much for your flexibility during this time and your willingness to do things a different way. As I walk by my kids who are all in secondary and hear the conversations that teachers are having with students to try to get them to engage, it just warms my heart and just makes me giggle. In fact, I participated in a Just Dance competition with my youngest daughter in PE as a celebration to the end of the semester, and that was just fun. So thank you for all you do, teachers, to try to connect with kids and make this virtual setting an enjoyable one. We are so proud of the SMSD students that we have currently and past SMSD students. There's one in particular that I wanted to just recognize, and she's a Shawnee Mission West graduate, Sydney Miramontes. She was selected to play for the new women's professional soccer team that's here, that's coming to Kansas City. Her sister Sinclair plays for North Carolina team. Again, both Shawnee Mission West grads. It's really amazing to see these young women doing incredible things and just being really incredible trailblazers. So well done to the Miramontes sisters. Again, thank you to the PTAs for the opportunity to discuss the bond and the superintendent search. And one final note, please participate in the CTC and the CAA open house that's coming up. When is that, Dr. Fulton? Is it the tomorrow night?
Mhm.
Okay. Just from personal experience, it's an incredible, the signature programs are a crown jewel in this district. And when your kids get into high school, I highly recommend that they look into the CTC and CAA for hands-on learning, hands-on opportunities. You will not be disappointed. So please join tomorrow night, check it out, and learn more. Thanks.
Thank you. We do need to seek a motion to go into executive session. Unfortunately, the individual speaking to us during executive session was not anticipating us going into executive session until 8 o'clock. So we will have a 30-minute window after the close of the meeting to the beginning of executive session, and then we anticipated 45 minutes for that executive session. So I apologize. Wasn't anticipating getting done early. That doesn't ever happen. So I will seek a motion from you, Dr. Sinclair, to go into executive session at 8 and to conclude at 8:45.
Okay, and so I move we go into executive session to discuss personnel issues pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under COMA and reconvene at 8:45 in the boardroom.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we're adjourned for now. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.